Welcome to another podcast from George Eastman House, International Museum of Photography and Film.
The early history of film in America is written without much mention of Burton Holmes, and that's a great oversight because he was very influential. And he really tapped into that thirst in America at that time for seeing moving images of interesting and unique places and things, and that's what he tapped into. My name is Patrick Loughney. I'm a curator of the motion picture department at the George Eastman House. And this morning we're going to talk about Burton Holmes, one of the lesser known figures in film history. He was the first person to take a moving image or motion picture camera to many places in the world. There's no doubt that he's the first person to take a motion picture camera to the Philippines and to South Pacific Islands, parts of Africa, and probably Japan and China as well. He started as a sort of a son of an upper middle class family in Chicago, very interested in photography and the new Kodak cameras coming out of Rochester, New York, that had been invented by or fostered by George Eastman. So Holmes began traveling and making his photographs as an amateur in a camera club, and he was wealthy enough to travel and went to Mexico and then traveled to other parts of the world. And then he began to realize that other people were so interested in his photographic journeys and his sort of images of his travels that he could become a professional. So he began doing lectures, and it attracted a lot of attention, and it was very popular, and he began to polish his profession. His first major accomplishment was to go to Athens and be there for the revival of the modern Olympic Games in 1896, which he photographed and made a lecture series based on that. In 1897, he made an important step. He was very aware of motion pictures as the next technological stage of development in the transition from still to motion pictures, and realized their potential for capturing the imagination of audiences around the world. So he added motion pictures to his lectures and became immensely popular. Through a combination of circumstances, we here in the Eastman House became aware of some of the collection through a woman named Genoa Caldwell, who had at one time worked for the Holmes Company, but long after Holmes's death. And she came across, or got word of, long after her connection with the company was severed, that there was a portion of films that was in a storage building or storage room in an apartment somewhere in Pasadena, California. And so I sent two of my curators out to California, and the films were indeed there. Some nitrate film, rusty cans, kind of the usual thing that you find in a long neglected collection. Films in very bad condition, shrunken and deteriorated in many ways, but still with the right resources capable of being preserved. And so that collection was packed up and sent here with the assistance of Genoa Caldwell, because she basically was the custodian of the collection and caused it to be brought here. So it's still a mystery because there are missing pieces, but we have a significant portion. It's a random sample, I would say, somewhere around 400 or 500 reels. It's a real mix, 16 and 35 millimeter film. Some of it's very early footage. Now this is shot in the silent era, probably by a hand-cranked camera, which means that the frame rate is a bit slower than is being run now, which is 24 frames a second. This is exactly the sort of scene that Holmes would record that would not be seen in a normal American newsreel. This shows the daily activities of the life of the people in this area. How they washed their clothes, how they cooked their food, how they farmed or tilled their fields. Holmes was very aware that what he was recording in his films, in many ways, was actions that would not last long in the face of the onslaught of Western culture in these parts of the world. But I think he saw that as his role, I think, as partly bringing these cultures to people, not just to show them strange and weird places, but to make them appreciate the art, the beauty, and the cultures of places around the world that weren't in America, that weren't in Europe. I saw those as highly important to the future of the United States.
We hope you've enjoyed this Eastman House podcast, and if you'd like to find out more, visit us at eastmanhouse.org. This Eastman House podcast is made possible by the generous support of Midtown Athletic Clubs, a leader in upscale athletic and sports resort management with facilities throughout the U.S. and Canada. Visit us at midtownclubs.com.